Fairly short, yes. Certainly my list is much shorter than it was last time.
Yeah, like all I have now is that like Alex and Matthew and I watched like a couple episodes of the Death Note anime because like we already watched the movie. Might as well see what the fuck it's about.
Mm-hmm. How'd that
we also
go?
just kind of had an epiphany and said we need to watch something actually decent. we can't watch more trash.
That is fair.
I have to talk about. I have to defend the fountain. This is not a good day.
Hey! I'm in the same boat as you.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Then again, I'm also like halfway. Sort of like a halfway.
Yeah, you seem kind of just perplexed by it.
Welcome back to the Hack Fraud Show. We're talking Darren Aronofsky, or as one person in my screenwriting class called him once, Darrenofsky.
Oh, okay.
And I've never forgotten that. So, yes, we're here to discuss Darrenofsky's...
John Frankenheimer or Frank Oppenheimer, so... I think that's the worst thing I've ever done.
Well, except for your continued insistence on calling John Boyega John Bodega.
But yeah, but that's at least somewhat understandable.
True. All right.
That's not the full swing and a miss. But regardless,
no.
We watched some movies this week, as we usually do.
Who boy did we ever watch some movies, and we're gonna get into those movies here in due time. But first, of course, we're going to talk about what we've been watching. So, besides the Super Bowl, guys, what have we been watching?
What we've been watching? Well, like, I'm seeing, like, Philadelphia riots on TV right now. Does that count?
No.
No, okay, that doesn't count. Well, Matthew, Alex, and I decided, we don't want to watch trash this week.
Mm-hmm. So
what we decided to do was, because we'd already seen the Death Note live-action Abomination, we said, hey, let's watch the show and see if it's not trash.
And
it's okay. It's okay. It's got like there's some like neat like design elements and like it starts on like this kind of land of the dead and it's full of like a bunch of like creatively designed bird monsters playing poker or like the equivalent of poker. And there's some like fun like little like philosophy things in there. Like there's an entire like diagraph about like do I have the because of course like backstory, book comes from sky, right name and book, you can kill people, etc., etc. And at first I kind of starts like, do I have the means to do this? What am I to say I am justice and I have the right to decide who dies and who doesn't? But he very quickly decides, yeah, I do. And he just starts fucking killing like murderers and like crime bosses left and right.
Well, you gotta have a show, John.
Yeah, you gotta have a show, but like, and then pretty damn quickly they start making a religion out of it. Pretty great. I think it's in the first episode they start making a religion. It's like him at a computer with like the deaf god who owns the book behind him, and he's like, "Look at this! They've created." He goes to a website. There's like these like things like this are popping up everywhere. They're worshiping me. And like, here's the thing: like, it does seem to have charm. Like the deaf monster is like a funny thing with a funny face that eats apples as like a gimmick, and it's like a generally like charming presence. Though like it seems to treat murder a bit lighter than it probably should, given the nature of it. But it's a kind of like pulpy little. It kind of sets up as kind of cat and mouse thing because then there's like this great detective who comes in and wants to catch this man who's killing people somehow, and it becomes like a match of wits to see who can catch who. But it's fine. I enjoyed my time with it. It can be really fucking goofy.
Yeah.
Really fucking like the main deaf god has like 1,000-yard stare at like all times. At all times. And he's in a lot of it. But this is also the show that later on has the infamous line, I'm going to take a potato chip and eat it. I don't know if I want to recommend this. I really don't know what one would get out of it. What?
I think you have to.
Yeah, it has a line, I'm going to take a potato chip and eat it. I guess I have to.
That is a great line.
It is a great line, but it comes later. But it's alright. It's nice pulpy fun. I think like if you are like if it sounds intriguing to you, maybe you should check it out.
Okay.
But that's that. It exists.
Yeah.
Tyler?
Oh.
What did you watch?
Oh, thank you. Let's see here. I watched. I think right after we recorded the podcast last time, I went out and saw Hostiles starring
Ooh.
Christian Bale.
Ooh.
Kind of one of those, revisionist westerns, kind of a darker, more kind of clear-eyed take on the West as it was in history, and it was fine.
Yeah, that's about what it looked like.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed a lot of it. It's a very slow kind of just journey western, which I did appreciate. The storytelling of it leaves a little to be desired. Like, Christian Bale hates Native Americans, then he doesn't. So I don't know. It looks very good. It's got some good stuff in it. I did appreciate quite a bit of it, but on the whole, it I don't know. It was
I
okay.
think it's just kind of sad that a John Ford movie from the late 50s is more complex than this.
Yeah, well, yeah. But hey, John Ford movies weren't nearly this violent.
No.
So there you go. It could have done with a little more nuance, but there it is. Not bad by any means, but
okay,
fine.
Okay.
Let's
Maybe
see.
if I'm forced to see it, I won't scream.
Yeah. Then let's see. I saw another Western, an older one, called The Naked Spur, starring Jimmy Stewart, directed by Anthony Mann, 1953, 1954, somewhere in there.
I don't think I've heard of this one.
It's also kind of fine. There are, again, some very good elements to it. They set up a lot of really interesting things that just kind of never really pay off in a substantial way. It's so strange. They set up this thing where Jimmy Stewart is tracking down this very specific guy to kind of claim a bounty on him, and this is one of those westerns that's like a revenge western. So you would think that he would have some kind of personal connection to the villain. He doesn't. I mean, he does have a personal stake in bringing him to justice because he plans to use the bounty money to buy his farm back after his girlfriend sold the farm when he went off to fight in the Civil War or something.
Bit complex.
Complex.
It's odd, and there is some good acting in it. I mean, Jimmy Stewart's great. Yeah, again, on the whole, I don't know. It didn't really come together, and I don't know. It was fine.
So it's no Liberty Valance.
Certainly not. But
also Liberty Valance is one of the greatest films of all time.
Oh yes, John Ford is John Ford, and no one can touch that.
Yeah. So the lesson we're learning is John Ford westerns, the best.
Yes. And then last night, I went out and I saw the new 4K restoration. I went out to the New Art Theater to see the 4K restoration of Andrei Tarkovsky's final film, The Sacrifice.
This is art house bingo right there. I went to an art house. It's a 4K restoration. It's Andrei Tarkovsky's final film. There's art house bingo.
There's more to art house bingo here because it was shot by Sven Nykvist, who was Ingmar Bergman's preferred director of photography.
Yeah, that's the free space.
That's bingo.
Yeah, but this metaphor is getting dragged out long enough. How was it?
Man, I don't know. See, this is the first Tarkovsky movie I've ever seen, and I'm sensing that this might not have been the best one to start with.
Yeah, well, Tarkovsky is a director that's kind of fascinated me for a while, because it seems like he makes the kind of films that they seem like both the kind of films that I'd be fascinated by, because they're these grandiose pie in the sky world building exercises, but they're also just super laborious and long at times.
Yeah, no. Okay, so let me kind of run down the plot of this movie. see if I can do this.
Well, where was this made?
Okay, so this was made after he left the Soviet Union. He made it in, I believe, Sweden.
Okay.
I think most of the characters speak Swedish, although the titles are in French. Some characters speak English, some characters speak German, I think. It's very strange.
That's kind of Europe for you. The EU, everyone speaks everything. We can do that. It's kind of really strange from our perspective.
Yeah. Pretty sure it was made in Sweden, largely. So, it centers on this man named Alexander, who used to be an actor, now he's like a literary critic, I think. And he has this beautiful house in the countryside. He has a son and I think a stepdaughter and a wife, and they all live in this big house, and it's his birthday, and his whole family's together. They have a couple friends over, like Otto the postman, and Victor, who's a doctor, apparently the only doctor around for miles, it seems. Anyway, so the first 45 minutes or so, there's a lot of, it's Tarkovsky, very long, graceful camera moves, not a lot of close-ups, just a lot of philosophical conversations about various topics, about God and life and art and all this stuff. And I was kind of sitting there thinking, okay, maybe I'll be into this. The first part of the movie does feel very much like an Ingmar Bergman film.
Yeah, that sounds like all of my comfort zones in one place.
Yes, but then
Oh dear.
here's what happens. So there is some kind of nuclear attack, and the emergency broadcast systems are come on and are oh, stay where you are, and everyone kind of has varying, very strange reactions. I think his wife kind of goes nuts and needs to be sedated, and his daughter kind of doesn't react at all. He prays to God. And so then after this has been going on for a while, Otto the postman tells him, oh, what you need to do is go and fuck this woman who works for you, who lives over here, because she's a witch. And if you fuck her and make a wish when you come, it will reverse the nuclear apocalypse. So he goes, and he does that, and get this, it works, and the nuclear apocalypse is undone, and he wakes up at home, and then he just kind of goes crazy and burns his house down, and an ambulance comes and takes him away, and I don't know what the fuck is going on in this movie.
But Tyler,
Look, man, you've said a lot of things, and now I want to see this movie.
Tyler, clearly, that having the instinctual feeling to burn your house down is exactly what happens after you fuck a witch post-apocalypse. That's just what happens.
After the postman tells you to fuck a witch, you naturally just want to burn down your house.
Oh my god. This is one of the most bizarre movies I've ever seen. And now, I know, John, this might sound super enticing to you. It is 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's Tarkovsky, and it's going to be long, laborious, graceful, giant, strange fuckfest.
Well, Daniel watched Andrei Rublev and insists that it's great. So take that for what you will. But the sacrifice, I just don't know. I just don't know. But
Tarkovsky Week event will be a thing we have to reckon with.
Oh boy.
And it'll be a thing.
It'll be a thing. This movie does look incredible, and it's actually, I would say it's one of the best.
With Ingmar Bergman's director of photography.
Yeah, no, Sven Nykvist is one of the best cinematographers who ever walked this earth. The movie looks incredible. It's one of the best looking things I've ever seen. But good lord, I would not watch it in its entirety ever again.
Though speaking of this is another Russian director. I had to watch a Soviet film for a class.
Ooh.
It's called Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
No, this won the 1984 Oscar for Best Foreign Film.
Oh, interesting.
I have no idea why. Actually, that's a bit harsh. The setup of it is there's these three girls in the Soviet Union. One of them is a proper Muscovite. One of them is used to be a peasant. Another is very artificial and wears nice dresses and covers herself in makeup and strawberry facials and so forth. And it kind of goes about it with a Marxist parable of how one gets exactly what she wants, one gets fucked over by a hockey player, and the other has very strange marital strife not even marital strife. She gets a boyfriend at the end, and there's a very strange scene where he runs off, and the hockey player, who is now like a mutual friend, has to come over and convince him to come back to this woman. And it's also got like this structure where like it starts off in like 1958, and then they fast forward to them 20 years later in 1978, and what I'm making it sound rather strange, but one of the notable things about it is how like American film it is. Mm-hmm. Like it's got like very quick editing. It's got like lots of like kind of what to the Soviets was pop music.
Uh-huh.
And so forth. It's very like quick, and it's not like methodical like most Russian film. It's also not really quite like the socialist realism that had dominated film before this film that came out. Though actually, there are some filmmakers that have been breaking that. But most of all, like it is interesting insofar as you can read into it as like you have some men and characters that are this is the proletariat. This is what we want to do. If you work hard enough and you keep your nose down, you can do well. Look at Moscow, this beautiful, wonderful, idyllic thing that we can ascribe to, and in which you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Though it also was kind of like, if you are familiar with the Soviet Union as like a classless society, the fact that this movie is as clear-eyed about class as it is, I think, is kind of notable.
Uh-huh.
Though it'd be something to be argued that, like, for Russian audiences, that wasn't very revolutionary. But I think, like, American audiences looking at it went like, "Oh, the Soviet Union, it does have classes. It is like us. Look at them." And so forth. So I think it's interesting as a time capsule, not so much as a movie. It's all right. It's fun. It's got lots of fun music. It's got some fun performances. It's got some pretty good filmmaking here and there. It can be really funny.
Okay,
it can be really funny, but like I can't. It's like 2 hours 15 at least, and like so like I can't. I'm not quite sure if I can recommend it. I was mostly bored, but I can also kind of see it as like the interesting time capsule that it is.
Uh-huh.
So that is Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears. That is a great title, though.
Yeah, and I've never heard of a Soviet movie that was what I would call fun before, so I'm curious.
Yeah, well, Tyler, the Soviet Union wasn't a fun place.
So I've heard.
I'll tell you that too.
I just watched Dr. Zhivago. I know this, in fact.
Well, if you want to know more about the Soviet Union, listen to Masha Gessen, like I always say.
Oh, yes. All right.
Yeah.
And read, you read a book.
And what episode are we on?
This is 91, I believe.
91?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it took me 90...
We're coming right up to the 2-year mark.
Yeah, we're cruising on up.
But it took me 90 episodes to get a fucking microphone. So I just wanted to announce that. So
yes,
this is
you may notice
this
that
sound like ass.
You may notice that Reed is coming to us louder and clearer than ever before.
It doesn't sound like he's talking to us through a paper tube that also modulates his voice.
All right, we've got stuff to talk about, so we better keep this train a rolling.
I'm not ready.
Well, that's ready. Okay. That's okay. We could start with Black Swan.
Okay, Black Swan, kind of like the Darren Aronofsky movie, other than like Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah, sort of. So yeah, this movie came out.
Got all the Oscar buzz.
Yeah, this movie came out in 2010. Was a surprisingly big hit. I think it grossed like more than 300 mil worldwide. Got a lot of Oscar attention. I think it feels like Mother might be becoming the quintessential Darren Aronofsky movie, but
well, we'll see in a few years.
Yeah, we'll give that time.
I remember when this came out. This is one of those movies where I remember all the daytime shows and Today and all that. They had this is Black Swan. It's weird and dark, and Natalie Portman's great in it. And I remember anytime I'd see a clip of it, I'm just like, these aren't humans. but so I've been kind of curious about it, but I also was kind of like, maybe I've already seen this movie.
Perhaps. So I will say, this movie is odd, yes, but after you've seen Persona, this movie's a goddamn walk in the park.
No. Here's the thing about it. It's strange, but only in a stylistic way.
Yeah.
You have weird things like her turning into a swan, and the painting screaming at her.
Right.
But on like a narrative level, it's kind of conventional for Darren Aronofsky.
I would agree with that. Yeah. So this movie follows. Reed, what are you looking at?
Maybe he's confused by the movie.
Oh wait. Oh, sorry. I was hearing piano music.
Oh.
I guess there's also piano in the Black Swan, so it's relevant. But I actually didn't see the Black Swan because I'm one real
There's not as
read.
much piano as you might think.
Oh, you were one real read again this week.
He told me beforehand. He said it's the return of one real read.
All right. Well, that's okay. Anyway,
okay.
So this movie follows Natalie Portman as Nina, a ballerina in a prestigious New York City ballet company.
Yep, you see the Lincoln Center and all that.
Yeah. She is cast as the Swan Queen in their new production of Swan Lake.
Swan Lake.
Yes, the movie is Black Swan. Anyway, she kind of lives under the thumb of pretty much every authority figure in her life, from her mother, who she still lives with in like a bedroom that, I have to guess is the bedroom that she's lived in since she was a child.
I can only assume so.
And then you have the director of the theater company, played by Vincent Cassel, I believe. Mm-hmm. He is kind of a abusive figure in a lot of ways.
Yeah. There's a lot of like, oh, consent. What's the movie? What are you doing? Oh no.
Yeah. Anyway, but she the central through line is that she's a perfect fit for the White Swan half of the character, but she cannot quite pull off the more sexually charged, sensual role of the Black Swan, and
it's because she's too innocent, and she must shred her innocent and go beyond her mother to be able to play the Black Swan. But it's also dangerous, and it hurts her.
Yes, but she's also becoming unhinged.
Yeah,
and
she's also like hallucinating everywhere, and looks like she's in the middle of a panic attack in every fucking scene.
Yeah, pretty much, and.
Is Natalie Portman good at this?
I think so. She gives a very committed performance, and I think
it's committed, all right. She's going all out. And I'm just like every scene she's in, it's like, oh, what's going on?
Well, I mean,
every scene.
I like Natalie Portman, and I wouldn't want to denigrate her. Although she is terrible in the Star Wars prequels, but that's not necessarily her fault.
Everyone's terrible in the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah, no. I will say this. Go watch the movie Shattered Glass. It proves that Hayden Christensen can, in fact, act.
Okay. I'll do that.
But anyway, I don't know. Her performance in this, like, the character, I don't know if is really a character, but her performance, I think, brings something to it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this kind of has, like, for as weird as it is, I kind of got, like, Oscar movie written all over it. Like,
oh, really?
And so I won't call it Oscar bait, because it's way too ambitious to be that.
Uh-huh.
It's way too ambitious and, like, theatrical to be that. But like, there's kind of sense, like, it's on like a single character.
Right.
It's all about, like, her performance. It's also a movie about performance.
Right.
And so I can see exactly why, like, it hits all the Oscar boxes.
It is the quintessential win an Oscar for this movie for the actor movie.
Yeah.
Which, did happen.
Though I'd argue Mila Kunis is much better in the movie.
Interesting. I'm not sure I would argue that, but yes. Anyway, you also have Mila Kunis as this kind of odd figure who appears and is like new to the company and seems to be a much better fit for the role than Natalie Portman is. Although she is also kind of the sloppier, less technically adept ballerina.
It becomes straight. After a certain while, you kind of wonder, like, why did you cast her again? You're always screaming Black Swan at her in pretty much every part of the movie.
I mean,
but I can no one really acts like humans, but I think that's okay.
I think that's fine. It's not like it derails the movie. I think in terms of like what this is pulling from, it's got. Yeah. I mean, I realize Whiplash came out after this, but it feels very much like a cousin to Whiplash in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I'd also argue that, like, the obsession is there, but I think, like, Whiplash really digs into, like, this is an abusive figure,
right?
And this is how he exerts control over everyone.
Yeah.
And this really isn't about that. Like, it shows hints of it.
No.
It's there, but
Yeah.
like it just does not dive into it.
Right.
And considering like some of the stuff that's already in this movie about like him seducing her, I think it really needs to be.
I don't know. It kind of like takes that template and then throws in like a bit of Rosemary's Baby, a bit of Persona, a little bit of Cronenberg for good measure.
Yeah, Cronenberg's in there.
And I think I do agree with you. The story of it is like surprisingly conventional. Like I spent most.
You look at this and you're like, gee, is she gonna get too obsessed and it's gonna destroy her life? Gee, look, an abusive figure. This is not. I have no idea what this is gonna turn into. Yeah, well, I spent most of the movie like watching it and being like, well, I mean, this is good, and like the craft of it, I did really appreciate. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, no, it looks great. I love the way he uses mirrors in this movie.
Oh yeah, the mirror. There's like a great shot where like you get like this like close up of Tomas, but you have the giant mirror in the background, and he's watching Natalie Portman just like dance and dance and dance, and just follows her.
Yeah.
Through the mirror, and that's just great shots.
I love
There's
that.
Great craft in this.
Yes, this is the mode of Aronofsky, at least visually, that I like to see him in. The kind of roving 16mm camera that he employs in like The Wrestler Mother and all that.
And it is full film grain.
Yeah.
Full film grain.
Yes. And I also really appreciate, especially toward the end, how it uses the music of the ballet.
Oh yeah, and the music, that becomes a life of its own, though it's kind of silly at times.
Occasionally, but I do appreciate
I really
it.
do admire. It's like, yeah, it kind of becomes an opera about opera.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
It builds to a crescendo in a really nice way that I did appreciate.
Oh yes.
But
and I do admire just how much it fucks with reality and perception and memory too.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting things in here.
Right. Though, again, like, the writing of it is so strange because, like, so Aronofsky did not write this movie.
No.
And I really, like, there were many instances in this movie where I felt like it hit some points a little too hard. Like, it applied a push where, like, a little tap would have been more effective.
There's a scene I always remember, and I remember this scene so much because like I saw it in like one of those like little like upcoming like Oscar movie things back when it came out. And it's a scene where like she gets the part of the Swan Queen.
Yes.
She comes home and the mother has a cake.
Right.
And she starts like cutting the cake and saying like, "Oh, here you are," and it's like, "No, not a big slice." And then for like the mother turns into a psychopath for a second. It's like, "I'll just throw the whole fucking thing away." And it's like, what are these people doing?
It's weird
Why
because
is everyone on edge.
It's weird because you kind of think that the mother will be like kind of another abusive, like domineering figure, and
actually no, she really isn't.
No, honestly, I was gonna say, like, apart from that scene, she's really not.
No, like especially we established like the one scene where she kind of does become like overbearing and screaming. Is that like turns out to be a dream or something?
Yeah.
That doesn't really become addressed again, which I'm actually kind of fine with. But.
Right. I think, I mean, now, I don't want to say that, like, there is any, like, literal... I don't want to say that we should interpret this movie to, like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to say here.
Well, I'm not trying to say like, oh, I need to know like what's real and what isn't.
Right?
All
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not here to try and track out like, oh, what is a dream, what isn't, what's hallucinations.
Yeah.
The film's kind of all about like ripping away those boundaries and graying areas. I think that's the best part of the movie.
Yes. Thank you for saying what I was struggling to say.
Yeah. So, I totally understand. Like, my issue isn't that it's like it's a dream. It just doesn't get addressed again.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it feels like the movie's kind of working too much towards a crescendo, where I feel like it could have used a few more like character pieces here and there.
Yeah, well, it's just strange because like when they do that, you start to feel like, oh, like maybe she's just like actually insane, and her mother is actually trying to help her.
Yes,
and then,
yes.
Like, I don't know what we're supposed to take away from that.
Yeah. I just feel like this movie needs a bit more clarification about that, and less people screaming horror at Natalie Portman.
Right.
Which is that's also strange.
That is odd. Like I do feel like this is a story that you've seen before.
Yes.
What it builds to, I think, is interesting. And the
You're
way
right.
the way things like just become completely dissociated and off the wall, like at the end, like when you roll into the last half hour of the movie, you kind of get the feeling like, oh, okay, now we're off to the races.
Now we're here. When Aronofsky goes unhinged, this movie turns into something incredible.
Yeah.
When it just becomes like full filmmaking force and full like musical prowess pouring through everything, it really does become something transcendent at times.
Yeah.
The problem is, I don't think it's enough of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of just that very end where it truly does like kind of envelop itself in its like periphery in a really interesting way.
Yeah. And I mean, all of that aside, though, I do think there are like a lot of genuinely unsettling moments scattered throughout the movie.
Yeah, like the Cronenberg stuff is really weird.
Holy shit! Like this for me was like more disturbing than Mother because like
oh yeah, definitely.
It was more.
Mother is just so abstracted and weird. It's kind of, I would also argue that like Mother goes all the fucking way.
Right.
Mother goes all out from beginning to end, and I think like that.
Well, that's the difference. Like I think that with this movie, I think maybe Aronofsky like should have done a rewrite if he didn't, and like kind of.
It's just too tasteful.
Yeah. Well,
it's too strange. I think it's just a little too tasteful.
I don't want to say tasteful. I would say maybe it is a little too restrained. Certainly, I think this movie would not have been as big a hit as it was if he'd gone all out with it. But
when I say restrained, I think of like the classic like French New Wave idea of like quality film, where it's like we have like this main star who performs. It's about like the theater and like abuse and that sort of thing. And, like if it just stripped itself of its like more conventional threads and really became something cuckoo bananas, and like really, I think we would be looking at something properly transcendent. But you're right, it wouldn't be as much of a hit.
Yeah. Which, that's fine. It's not a bad movie by any means.
Oh, no, I don't think. I could never say that.
For all this, like, what I really appreciate about Darren Aronofsky, having now seen, I think, 4 of his movies.
I've seen 3 all the way through now.
Yeah, because I've seen The Wrestler and you haven't.
Oh, yeah.
But you should watch that. Because The Wrestler
I should, yeah. I've heard great things about The Wrestler.
It's kind of a departure for him, but it is excellent. But what I appreciate about Aronofsky is that he is always willing to do something unique. And he is willing...
He has a really defined visual autorial command.
Yeah.
And that is apparent in every frame of this, and you just get the sense that, like, I am watching a technical tour de force in every frame.
Yeah.
And I don't really know of too many other filmmakers that really do that.
Yeah. I've really come to cherish and appreciate him as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
But, that being said...
Oh, Christ. Okay.
It's time for the main event here.
It's time. Allow me to sort of say my little piece about it.
Okay.
Insofar as it, like... This movie is like one of those things where, like, I'm fascinated with, like, I'm fascinated with, like, I love history.
Sure.
I want to be a historian.
Uh-huh.
And like, there's something, like, real... I think this movie does something interesting with mythology and also, like, this, like, loose idea of time, and it's all about, like, wrinkles and circles and things of that sort. And I admire it for that. I've seen that before.
Yes.
I'm not saying that's a new thing, but I think this movie brings like a really unique eye to it. And I also think that like the visual style is just utterly incredible, and some of this movie's the most gorgeous stuff I've ever seen.
Okay.
I want to say something, but
I'm going to stop there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to let you.
All right. Listen.
I'm going to pull out.
Here.
Yes.
Can I,
Dr. Reed? Yes.
say my spiel first?
Yes. Let me clarify real quick. We're talking about 2006's The Fountain.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Dr. Reed.
Okay. For like the first maybe 25 minutes of this movie, I'm like, wow, this is really strange. And then I realized, well, what type of movie this was. Whenever Izzy's dialogue came through, I took science. What? I took science.
You know, Reed, I'm going to say this again. I said this in the group chat. Out of all the fucking things to point out in this movie, that line. Why that line?
See, yeah. It's just so weird. It's so bad. But, like, here's the thing, though. I know. Here's the thing. Because, like, at this point, like you know, like, 3 separate, like, threads or like, modes. You have, like, the real time, which he's, like, this animal hospital vet. Oh, God. Okay.
What is that? Oh, my Tyler notes.
Hates the fountain.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
I'm ready.
I don't know, but then, like, part of the weirdest part is this Philip Glass scored, like, mystical, metaphorical realm that's never really cleared up, and I'm like, well, but it's scored to Philip Glass-esque music, so I guess I can get behind. I don't understand it.
Glass, and I love weird surreal worlds and nebulas that are all gold. But
that's fine, and like it has like some sense of symbolism until the very end, where it all crumbles and it just loses the Mayan mythology and just abandons it.
It goes weird places. It
goes nonsense places. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But like for the most part, it's like it goes loose in between, and you're like, how the fuck does this relate? And then, like, it kind of offers an answer, and it's like, okay, that's somewhat satisfying. Hugh Jackman can't act in this movie. I'm sorry.
I think
the acting's terrible in this movie.
We're gonna get this later, but insofar as like, I don't like any of the Spanish conquistador stuff, because that's just the stuff for like all of like the.
Oh my God! I'm sorry. I just that whole thread.
Yeah.
Is horrendous.
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Well, I kind of like the conquistador.
I like it. I like it only as a visual creation. That's the only thing it works as, is like a visual creation. And I do kind of like the weird ass tree of life scene at the end. I think other than that, as far as like there is just something to be said about like how like the film, so it becomes style over substance in I think like in a really peculiar way, whereas it just becomes just like characters just lost in like golden environments, like surrounded by machines and surrounded by fucking like nebulas and so forth. And it kind of just becomes like an atmospheric tone poem, like people looking into like atmospheres and trying to find out like what.
And also semen-colored tree sap from the supposed tree of life.
But Tyler.
Oh my God.
We all know what we're here for.
All right, look, I don't want to make this like a rage thing. Yes. Honestly, I was not angry watching this movie.
Okay.
I was mostly just perplexed.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie, I found this movie to be what a lot of people said Mother was. And I really liked Mother.
Okay.
But this movie was like everything that Mother's detractors said it was. It is so pretentious, so up its own ass, like so much style over. Like I would say this movie is all style and no substance. I'm
not far from that, to be honest.
It's trying to be about something.
Yeah.
Until the last like 10-ish minutes, I had no idea what that was. And then when I got to the last 10 minutes and found out what it was, I was like, oh, okay.
I'm writing down, oh, okay.
Like, for most of the movie, I was like, okay, well, this is really bad, but it's not, like, horrendous. I got to the end, and I think the end of the movie makes it horrendous. Like, when you get to this bit where you find out that, like, bald space Hugh Jackman is present-day Hugh Jackman, who has found out how to live forever and is now floating around in a space bubble trying to figure out how to bring his wife back to life. Like, I was like, okay, so really, Darren Aronofsky, this is what you wanted to do with this goddamn movie? Like, this movie, nothing in it makes any sense. Nothing! Like, the thing about Mother is that the allegory in it is very clear and obvious.
Yeah, very clear, very obvious. They hit it very...
Yeah.
It's strange how they present it, but it's always there, you know.
Right. And some might say maybe too obvious in that film. And I wouldn't say that a director has to come out and say exactly what their movie's about. So most of the time it helps if they don't. But I think that there should be something in your movie that the audience can hold on to help them divine what you meant by it without you having to come out and go, oh, this is what it's about. Like, for most of the runtime, I had absolutely no idea what was going on.
Okay. Well, I'm going to offer, like, some of, like, what I, like, think of it, because, like, I think, like, there's routinely, like, things about obsession and hubris, like Hugh like in all iterations, Hugh Jackman is trying to do God's work. He's trying to, like, save a tree of life. He's trying to find a tree of life. He's trying to cure cancer for his dying wife.
Well, the movie is called The Fountain.
Yeah.
Clearly referring to the Fountain of Youth.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And also this shitty story about conquistadors. And
right.
Also, like,
oh my god.
God-awful book,
when Rachel Weisz hands Hugh Jackman that book and it just says The Fountain, I was like, so it's that kind of movie, huh?
Oh no, I was like, oh look, perfect ink writing.
I think we all could have been spared this if Hugh Jackman had just had the balls to tell his wife that she's a terrible writer.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Like that would have been a much more interesting movie, actually.
But like I don't know, like I was just like always fascinated by like the visual phenomenon of like Hugh Jackman talking to like talking through different iterations of himself in different time periods. It uses repetition in an interesting way. I mean, like the shot of like the like sacrificial priest like trying to hit him with a flaming torch is awful.
That looks so bad.
Terrible.
Yeah, that
like there are other like curious like uses of repetition that I'm like I'm not like saying this is a perfect film or even a great film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that like but I was like genuine. I was like usually I was like routinely engrossed. I think the film has a tremendous atmosphere. I think it like some of that is just visuals.
Uh-huh.
I will say just some of this is just like You
liked the visuals in this movie? Really?
Some of the stuff was nice.
What's wrong? I mean, as a visual creation, what's wrong with bald Hugh Jackman in like this in like a dying tree in the middle of like a golden nebula?
I mean, like, okay, and the nebula looks pretty good.
Okay, yeah.
I think
I thought the nebula looked terrible.
What?
Oh, fuck off!
Well, the swirling like gold stuff, like, okay, fine, that was okay, but like then you have shots like Hugh Jackman's silhouette, like, doing Tai Chi against a terrible-looking star field, and, like, so much of this movie looks like it was shot against a fucking green screen circa 2001, like...
Well, Tyler, it was.
Yeah, and, I understand that, like, this movie was made on a pretty limited budget, because he had to severely cut down what he had in mind. I mean, it cost $35 million, but for what he had in mind, apparently that was a limited budget.
Yeah.
But, like, oh my god, this movie looks terrible. This movie looks terrible. Good lord. And the way it's shot is so bizarre. It's like he shot half of it with a 35mm lens, like, for just normal, like, wide shots and regular old-looking singles. And then the other half of it he shot with the longest lens he had available. Like, what the fuck is he doing? Good lord.
Oh, I mean, there's two movies. Like, there's two visual movies in this. Like, there's, like, all, like, the straight, like, here's, like, Hugh Jackman at, like, the hospital trying to cure a monkey. And then here's the Conquistador. and here's the fucking, like, weird death tree. And so forth. I don't know. I do like it. Like, sometimes it doesn't all work. Like, you can always tell it's on a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
You can always like tell it's CGI, but like I think like you know I'm a sucker for like sumptuous like golden environments and so forth.
Well, although you are a noted hater of the visual style of one Mr. David Fincher, and this movie is like the yellowest goddamn thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
This
yes,
is Fincher porn.
but David Fincher is boring with his yellow visuals. Darren Aronofsky is anything but.
Okay, I guess that's fair.
David Fincher's really fucking boring, and he also doesn't know what the fuck yellow means. Whereas I think there is a reason why Darren Aronofsky said, like,
I suppose.
yellow.
Sure.
Let's make it all yellow.
One other main point.
Oh, certainly. Go on. This is wildly entertaining.
I'm glad you think so. The other thing is that, like, okay, whatever thematic stuff you're trying to tease out, and I were to guess that if I were to watch this movie again, God help me, but if I were to do that, I would probably be able to tease out more of, like, what he was going for, pick up on more of the parallels. Second viewing can often help you do that with a movie.
Yeah.
But it's so profoundly silly and stupid.
Oh, yeah.
The storytelling in this movie,
shit.
like
we have Hugh Jackman is gurning into the camera half the time. I am not going to say, like, oh, this is like some, like, quiet, like, subtle thing.
Like,
that,
if when we got to the first scene of Hugh Jackman, like, in the animal hospital, like, doing his work, I was like, I said out loud, like, is this supposed to be a parody of medical dramas? Like, what? And, like, seriously, this is
the monkey, and I sort of like, is that a joke?
This is the most stereotypical plot that I think I've ever seen in a movie. Like, he's the doctor working on, like, devoted to, like, working himself to death to figure out this project because it's tied into his personal strife. Boy, I've never seen that before. Like, Jesus Christ. And then the conquistador stuff we've said is all terrible.
Awful. You can't understand anyone. Nobody knows what it means. Looks terrible.
And
the tree stump looks too much like cum.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then
though I think, like, the Tree of Life scene is just strange enough where I'm like, okay, I'll take this.
Jesus. That scene. I'll get there. I'll get to that. But
although one thing that, like, I do have a problem with is, like, with, like, the whole Tree of Life is like, oh wait, it opens up. Just goes through the back of doors. So you just avoid all that. Goddamn. Dumb movie.
Yeah.
Dumb movie.
Dumb.
Yeah, I'm not denying
so
that.
dumb. And
dumb movie.
What was I gonna say?
You're gonna say something about the Tree of Life.
Oh. Well, then you have Space Hugh Jackman, often as Orb, doing whatever. That stuff is like, I don't know what the fuck it is until the end. And then when I get to the end and find out what it is, I'm like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, and then the end of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ. This movie ends with, like, two of the most ridiculous scenes I think I've ever seen in anything. Where first, Conquistador Hugh Jackman, like, drinks the lotion cum whatever of the Tree of Life. And then turns into a flower bed. Why? I don't know. Okay. And then we cut to Space Hugh Jackman, who has figured out that he must die to truly be with his wife, because he's lived for so long, like thousands of years, I assume. So yes, now he has to ascend into the nebula and die. And good lord, that scene just, ugh.
Oh wait, so that was that was like 1,000 years in the future then. Oh
yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about it, like, Tyler, like,
That's so
I don't necessarily.
So dumb.
I don't necessarily have a defense for, like, all the things you're saying. Like, I agree with everything you're saying on, like, a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
But just for me, like, I was just in a space of it. Like, I think just the strangeness of it, and just, like, how, like, I think the strangeness of it just really did take me in.
Uh-huh.
I think there was just, and I think there was, like, I think maybe I just got, like, drawn into melodrama. It is just, like, so up to 11. It's just so stupid that it just creates its own world. Mm-hmm. And I just can't help but be, like, enamored by that. And, like, also, and I will defend the visuals. I think there are some gorgeous things in this movie.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I think you're crazy, but that's fine.
It's not the first time we've been here.
True.
Yeah. No, it's been a while since we had one of these.
Yeah. Reed, do you What else do you have to say?
So this is one scene that like sticks with me, and I don't know why. It's a bad scene because it has the whole Izzy and Hugh Jackman relationship dynamic, which is just not fleshed out. It's just like
she's an object.
weird and
She's an object.
She's that is one of the worst written female characters I've seen in anything ever.
I'm not going that far, but she's not a character.
No, she
doesn't not a character at all.
No, she doesn't feel like she feels like an object of definitely an object of
a lazy screenwriter.
Yeah,
that too. So there's a scene like towards like the like I don't know, like 45-minute mark or whatever the fuck is that, like, you know, Hugh Jackman's you know attending to the wife and like a weird bath scene, and like the background is just is like just like the nebula, which is great, and it's like, oh wow, that's really smart set design. Good for you. And then like they like fuck in the tub, and it's like, oh,
it's so weird. They're like,
it's so weird,
talking about how she's losing her sense of perception of temperature, and then somehow all of a sudden they're having sex. What?
And then they just fuck in the tub.
And then they
like during that, it's like
fully clothed,
it's like
Hugh Jackman jumps in the tub.
Oh yeah.
But it's so strange because it's like Izzy just changes the tone of the entire scene, and like I can't help but like still looking. It's like, wow, they really wasted that set. They wasted that set.
I think, yeah. As far I think what we're coming at is the fountain. Mighty stupid.
Oh yeah.
But I will admit I was taken in by its charms, and I found it to be like a really engrossing experience. Like, it's not perfect in any way, but there is some batshit crazy, like full-on Darren Aronofsky filmmaking in this, and just some batshit crazy ideas that like I just can't believe got put to screen, and I admire that, and I admire that greatly.
Yeah. Yes, Reed.
So I'd like to make a confession. So Space Hugh Jackman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, for the entire movie, I thought that was just one giant metaphor for his, like, journey and his arc, whatnot. And then, you know, being told, like, nope, that's just him in the future. Like,
yeah.
So it's like
I said, the ending, like, retroactively makes everything that came before the movie 100 times worse.
Yeah. But I am still curious, like, what the fuck else Darren Aronofsky had in fucking mind for this thing.
Yeah. Well, John, I guess just in summation.
Oh, yes.
I can't take this away from you. You were entranced by the movie, and
certainly.
full credit to you for that, because I guess you found something.
I came in the Black Swan knowing exactly what it was going to be, and the fountain constantly had me thinking, what the fuck am I going to see from this thing next? And you don't get that with too many movies.
That is true. I will say, like, full props to you, Darren Aronofsky, for trying something. But, you know, every director has one.
Oh, yeah.
This was his. And,
I completely understand why you hate it.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm sorry it didn't work out. But, hey, I think he did everything this movie was trying to do much better with Mother. And so, I give him full credit for that.
There's something to be said. I mean, Mother is like infinitely more coherent if that's what you're searching for.
Yeah.
But as far as I don't know, I think there's some things in the fountain which I kind of wish Mother was as visually ambitious as like the fountain, but regardless.
Well, you know,
we are where we are.
Mother looks good.
Yes.
And I'm sorry. I'm
killing this. I am killing this. Darren Aronofsky week is done, and we're not quite sure whether we like him or not.
I love and value him as a filmmaker. The Fountain is his Life Aquatic. That's all I have to say.
This is another Life Aquatic for me.
And you know, again, he was gonna make it for $70 million. That didn't work out. He made it for $35 million. So the man's resourceful, if nothing else.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It does not. I'm gonna hold my tongue on that, but
I hope he doesn't get put in director jail.
Yeah, and he didn't get put into director jail. So
yeah, and not after this. So, if anything was going to put him in director jail, it would probably be The Fountain. So I think he's going to be okay.
Because people like Mother caused like a big stink and a big controversy, so that's going to keep him around.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
But though, there's also The Fountain is one of the most perplexing it has one of the most perplexing cinematic reactions of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Was just like the filmic community just went bonkers and tried to figure out what the fuck is this about, and is it good? Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
And so forth. And we have some answers for you, and we don't agree with each other.
True. So seek it out if you're interested, and make up your own mind, because that's what this is all about.
I can't think of any other movie like this.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But
thank God for that. I'm sorry. Anyway, next time. Next time.
Look, man, I have the why Tyler hates The Fountain list, and I got endless pleasure out of this. So
I appreciate that you value me bashing movies that you like enough to take notes about it.
Oh, certainly. Well, Tyler, I appreciate your opinion.
Oh, thank you. As do I.
Why else would I take notes? But I think I have an idea for what to do next week, and I think we've been putting this off far too long.
Okay.
Terry Gilliam week.
Oh!
You know what we need to do? Brazil and Time Bandits.
Brazil and Time motherfucking Bandits. Oh my God, I am excited. I am excited. I am excited. Okay.
John, it's evil.
It's evil. Yeah, I reiterate, you're going to get to the end of that movie, and it'll make even less sense. But this also has my favorite movie god in any movie. So I think it is worth a read, because I remember I first watched this. Oh God, I can't remember when I first watched this. It was a few years ago now. And I just didn't know what to make of it, other than sharing the batshit crazy ending with you guys as a meme. But so I'm excited to come back to it, and I think Brazil is one of the greatest dystopia movies ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think I remember seeing that, but never finished it.
So. Yeah, I remember you never finished. Well, you also found a weird ass version that sped it up. So
no, that slowed it down.
So oh shit.
So it was 4 hours long, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was 2. I think the movie's 2 hours long, but he had a cut that was 2.5 hours. So they're
2 hours 40.
His director's cut is 2:20, I think. The official Criterion approved version is 2:20, so that's the one I'm gonna try to watch.
Yeah, I'll see what one I can get my hands on in short notice, as we always do.
Yes.
Here's the thing about Terry Gilliam is one of those filmmakers that I think has really impacted my cinematic eye and my cachet, and he ticks all my boxes for cachet for world building. But I haven't seen one of his movies in a really long time, and I think it's just finally back. It's finally time for me to get back to him.
I'm excited because, as you say, he is kind of a touchstone for you, and yet I've never seen a movie of his, so I'm anxious to get down to what makes him tick and what you draw from him. This is going to be an interesting experience, I think.
Yeah, Time Bandits is one of the strangest movies I've ever seen, and I want to see it again.
All right, so, God willing, I'll have time to watch this movie. I think I could figure something out. But
we'll of course negotiate as the week goes on, and of course, we will try to help you with your junior seminar project as best as we can, 1,000 miles away.
Thank you. All right, so Time Bandits and Brazil are coming your way with Terry Gilliam Week next time. And thank you, as always, for joining us. I hope you've gotten as much entertainment out of this as we do. And as always, we will see you next time.
Godspeed, friends.
Trash is not good for the human soul.
Well, you're right. but so much of my humor is made up of trash, so I would not be who I am today without trash, without the detritus of culture that surrounds me.
Yeah, you're right.
But the Patriots lost the Super Bowl, so how bad is it?
Yeah, so everything's good. And man, there's gonna be riots in Philadelphia, and it's gonna be hilarious, and everyone's gonna love it.
Yay.
Well, hey, it's the fun kind of riots where people run into light poles and it's funny. They didn't grease the light poles with Crisco this time. They did that for the NFC Championship game, but they didn't do it this time. So they can climb to their heart's content, those little tree-loving Philadelphians.
Philadelphia freedom. Shine on them.
This is the fan base that would get so drunk at football games that they built a courthouse in the basement. That's you can get pictures of that. It was surrounded by curtains, and they had a real judge there to try the drunks.
Jesus.
That sounds like something FIFA would do.
But it was in Philadelphia, and there's a great blog called Tales from the 700 section, and it's some of the shit that would go down is fucking hilarious. But that's enough sport ball.
Yes, this is not a sport ball podcast.
I thought you said the oboe was trash. I'm like, yeah, you're very right.
Why would I say that?
Hey, I played the oboe. It is trash.
Ooh.